had a feeling that something very strange was happening inside my own home. So I pretended to leave for Dallas to visit my sister. But instead of leaving Houston, I quietly hid inside the house across the street, the home of Mr. Rufus Tillman, my neighbor who had lived next to me for over 30 years. That night, while I was glued to the window frame watching my house, Mr. Rufus suddenly stepped closer, tapped my shoulder gently, and whispered, "Wait until midnight, Ms. Etta, then you'll see everything." And when the clock struck exactly 12, my breath caught in my throat. What I saw made me unable to believe my own eyes. But for you to understand why I ended up in that situation, let me start from the beginning. I am 64 years old. That night I, a woman who had lived decently her whole life, had to hide in a neighbor's home, secretly watching my own house like some kind of criminal. Because what I uncovered didn't just shatter the trust I had in my family. It made me realize how far people can go when greed takes over their hearts. My name is Etta Mosley. This little house, located in Midtown Houston, is where I have lived for 40 years. It isn't just a roof over my head. It is the entire history of my life. Everything here was built with hard work and sweat alongside my late husband, Marcus. Every small corner carries a part of our memories. The kitchen where we cooked Sunday breakfast, the living room where we watched our son Kareem grow day by day, the backyard garden where the two of us planted every bush, every little tree together. I still remember the very first night we moved in. Marcus lifted me over the threshold, laughed loudly, and said, "This will be your home forever, Etta. No matter what happens, this place will always belong to you." Back then, I could never have imagined there would come a day I would have to fight to protect that very promise. When Marcus passed away 7 years ago, right in the master bedroom we had shared for 35 years, my son Kareem insisted on moving in with his wife, Ayanna. "You can't live alone, Mom," he said, his voice full of sincerity. At the time, I thought it was the love of a child. How naive I was. The first few months were peaceful, even happy. We had dinner together, talked, laughed. Ayanna was considerate, gentle. She helped me shop, cooked the dishes I loved, beef stew, mashed potatoes, baked cornbread. Kareem fixed things around the house whenever something broke. I thought to myself, how lucky I am to have my family beside me in my old age. But then, about 4 months ago, things began to change, as if someone had flipped an invisible switch. Their smiles became forced, their conversations short and full of awkward pauses, and then the whispers began. At first, I thought age was making me suspicious. But no, those whispers were real. Every time I stepped into a room, they fell silent. Kareem jolted and hit his phone clumsily. Ayanna switched topics with a fake smile. "What were you two talking about?" I asked. "Nothing important, Mom," Ayanna answered, her sweet voice sounding hollow. "Just work stuff, Mom," Kareem added, eyes never leaving his phone. Then I noticed other signs. The door to the old master bedroom, the room Marcus and I had shared, was suddenly locked. It had always been open before. "Why did you two lock that room?" I asked one day. Ayanna answered too quickly. "Because there's a moisture problem, Mom. We don't want your things getting damaged." I froze. I didn't remember giving them permission to touch that room. I didn't remember ever mentioning anything about moisture. And strangely, every night when I walked down the hallway, I heard odd sounds coming from there. Footsteps, muffled voices, soft bursts of laughter that I knew for sure did not belong to my son or my daughter-in-law. One night around 11, I heard the front door open. I got out of bed and quietly stepped into the hallway. From my bedroom, I could clearly see the entrance. I saw Ayanna welcoming a young woman carrying a small suitcase. They spoke in very low voices. The woman handed Ayanna an envelope, probably money. Ayanna slipped it quickly into her pocket, then led her straight down the hallway, directly toward the moisture room. The sound of a key turning. The door opened. Warm yellow light spilled out, then went dark. The next morning at breakfast, I didn't mention anything. I just observed Ayanna made coffee, her smile still perfectly intact, but I no longer believed it. Kareem sat reading the news as if nothing had happened. "Did you sleep well, Mom?" I asked lightly. "Very well, Mom," Kareem replied without looking up. "Like a baby," Ayanna added. Lies. Both of them were lying. But I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what they were doing inside my own house before confronting them. That afternoon, when Ayanna went shopping and Kareem went to work, I tried to open that room. I had my own key. Of course, this is my house. But when I inserted it into the lock, I discovered they had changed it. They had replaced the lock on a room in my own home, without saying a single word. My heart pounded, anger rising like fire. Who did they think they were? This is my property, my home. Every inch of it is legally in my name, but I knew that anger wouldn't solve anything. It would only blur my judgment. So I took a deep breath and stayed calm. If they were hiding something, I had to find out, without letting them know that I knew. Then a plan formed in my mind. I would pretend to go away. I would tell them I was visiting my sister in Dallas. I would leave the house to them freely and watch from afar what they would do when they believed I was gone to make that plan work. I needed an ally, and no one was more trustworthy than my longtime neighbor, Rufus Tillman. He lived right across the street, and his window faced my front entrance directly. I told him everything I suspected, and what he said next made my blood turn cold. Mr. Rufus told me to wait until midnight, and what I saw afterward completely changed my life. If you want to know what happened when the clock struck 12, stay with me for the next part. Trust me, you won't believe it. Believe. "Ms. Etta, I've noticed something strange, too," Mr. Rufus Tillman said quietly as he poured me a glass of iced tea in his humble kitchen. Rufus was 72 years old, widowed just like me. We had been neighbors since the day my husband and I built our home. He knew every turn in my life, the joys and the wounds I had once kept hidden. "I've been meaning to tell you these past few weeks," he said, his voice heavy, "but I wasn't sure if I should interfere. I didn't want to worry you if there was nothing certain." His hand trembled slightly as he set the glass down. I swallowed hard. "What did you see, Rufus?" A cold fear crept down my spine. He let out a long, deep sigh. "I've seen strangers coming in and out of your home at odd hours, always at night, and each of them carries a suitcase or backpack. Sometimes it's young women, sometimes couples, never the same person. They arrive by taxi, by private car, and it's always Ayanna answering the door. They exchange something quickly, then go inside. Early the next morning, they leave quietly, fast, discreet, like they're afraid someone might catch them." Every word he spoke cut into me like a blade. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. Something truly was happening inside my own house, something involving strangers, money, and secrets. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I asked, my voice shaking, nearly breaking. "Because I wanted to believe I was mistaken," Rufus replied. "I kept telling myself maybe they were just Kareem's friends, or Ayanna's relatives needing temporary shelter. But last week, when I saw Ayanna take cash right at the door, I knew this was business. And once people start running business in the dark, nothing good comes from it." He leaned closer to me, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Ms. Etta, I don't know what they're doing in there, but one thing's certain. They don't want you to know. They wait until you're asleep. They act normal during the day. And that is the scariest part." I stayed silent for a long moment, then told him my plan. I would pretend to leave. I would tell them I was going to Dallas to visit my sister for a week. They would think I was truly gone, when in fact, I would be right here, across the street, watching everything. Rufus nodded immediately. "You can stay in my downstairs living room. From the window upstairs, you can see the entrance to your house and part of the living room. Everything you need to see, we'll see." I exhaled in relief. I wasn't alone anymore. I had an ally, a witness, someone who could confirm that what I saw was real, so no one could ever say I was confused or delusional later. There are moments when, as you begin to doubt the very people you love most, your heart wonders, am I losing my mind? Or am I the only one still sane? That was exactly the moment I was living through. I was terrified, furious, unable to grasp that the son I had raised for 36 years could be involved in something like this. But the truth, painful as it is always worth more than the sweetest lie. That night, I began to play my part. During dinner, I smiled softly, speaking as if nothing mattered. Tomorrow I'll go visit your aunt in Dallas for a week. It's been a long time. She keeps begging me to come. Their reaction was instant. Kareem looked up from his plate, his eyes brightening. Ayanna froze for half a second before flashing a smile. Too quick, too wide. "That's wonderful, Mom," Ayanna said cheerfully. "You need a change of scenery, right, Kareem?" "That's right, Mom," Kareem echoed quickly. "You deserve a break. Don't worry, Ayanna and I will take care of the house." "Don't worry about a thing." Those words echoed in my head like warning bells. The way they said it was as if they were trying to hide the relief they couldn't mask in time. They wanted me gone. They needed me gone. I smiled, still playing the gentle mother. "Please remember to water the garden every 2 days and keep the house tidy. I don't like mess." Ayanna nodded with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Yes, Mom, don't worry. Everything will be perfect when you return." Perfect. I knew it was that very perfection that frightened me most. The next morning, the performance began. I pulled out the old suitcase, the one Marcus and I used back when we traveled. I folded clothes, packed toiletries, did everything right in front of them. I even called my sister, speaking loudly enough for them to hear. "Yes, I'm getting ready now. I'll be there before lunch." Of course, my sister already knew the entire plan. Kareem insisted on driving me to the Greyhound station. I refused. "No need, son. I can take a taxi myself." But he kept insisting, eyes full of eagerness, as if afraid I might change my mind. At the station, Kareem walked me all the way to the gate. He hugged me and murmured, "Have a good trip, Mom. Call us when you get there." I looked into my son's eyes, the same eyes I had looked into since he was a child. I searched for a hint of guilt, a flicker of conscience. But all I saw was impatience. He just wanted me to get on that bus. He wanted to be completely sure I was gone from Houston for at least a week. I smiled lightly and whispered, "I will, son." Then I turned my back and walked into the station. But I didn't board any bus. I waited about 20 minutes, long enough for Kareem to believe I had left. Then I slipped out the back door, caught a taxi, and told the driver, "Take me to Mr. Rufus Tillman's house in Sunnyside." When I arrived, Rufus had everything ready. He took me upstairs. From that window, I could see nearly my entire home, the entrance, the little yard, even the faint glow of the living room behind the curtains. "Now," Rufus said, "we just wait and watch." I sat down by the window, my heart pounding heavily in my chest. My own home, once peace and happiness for 40 years, had suddenly become someone else's territory, a place I had to observe from afar, just to discover what the people I once loved were actually doing inside it. And then, as the clock edged toward midnight, I realized they weren't just renting out that room, they had turned my entire home into something far worse. If you want to know what nearly destroyed my faith in my own flesh and blood, stay with me. Everything began to unravel on that very Friday night. The first few hours passed normally. Ayanna went out shopping around 10 in the morning. Kareem went to work like any other day. The house across the street was left with nothing but silence. But when evening fell, around 6 o'clock, a scene made me hold my breath. A silver car stopped in front of the house. A young couple, they looked to be around 30, stepped out with a large suitcase and 2 backpacks. Ayanna opened the door before they even had a chance to ring the bell, as if she had been waiting for them. A welcoming smile, a few short exchanges. The man pulled out his wallet and handed over cash. Ayanna counted it quickly, then invited them inside. The ground seemed to disappear beneath my feet. I had just watched my daughter-in-law take money from strangers and lead them into my home as if it were a hotel. Rufus stood next to me, looking at the same scene, his face tightening. "You see that?" I asked, my voice trembling, needing someone to confirm that my eyes weren't deceiving me. "I see it, Ms. Etta. I see everything," Rufus answered briefly, the words dropping heavy like a hammer. This was no longer suspicion. This was the truth. They were using my house to rent out rooms without my knowledge. Renting out rooms. In the home I had built with my late husband, through years of labor and sacrifice, the place where I raised my son. The place bearing the weight of sacred memories. And now, they had turned it all into a secret business behind my back. Rage ran through my veins like liquid fire. I wanted to cross the street, knock on the door, and confront them in front of those guests right then and there. But Rufus laid his steady hand on my shoulder. "Wait, Ms. Etta. If you rush over now, all we'll know is this much. But if we wait and keep watching, we'll see the whole picture, the real scale of what they are doing." He was right. I took a deep breath, tried to calm the storm churning in my chest, then sat back down by the window, my hands clenching tightly on my lap. In the next hour, lights came on throughout the house, the living room, the kitchen, then the light in that room, my old master bedroom, the one they said had a moisture problem and always kept locked. Now I understood. There was no moisture issue. There were guests. Strangers were sleeping in the very space where Marcus and I had lived our 35 years of marriage. Memories rushed in. The night Marcus left this world in that room, I held him in my arms, whispering, "I love you. Don't go." But he still went, leaving me behind in a room that suddenly felt frozen to the bone, the armchair where he used to sit and read, the mirror where he fixed his hair every morning, the window where he once said, "Next year we'll plant more roses, Etta." But there was no next year for him, and now strangers were lying on that bed, walking on the same floor where I had cried for him for months on end. They were breathing the air of the most sacred memories of my life. Tears spilled from my eyes, not from sadness, but from fury, from betrayal, from a pain so deep it felt like I might split in two. "How could they do this?" I whispered. "How could my own son do this to his mother?" Rufus said nothing. He sat beside me, silent, honoring my grief. Outside, night fell thicker. Before my eyes, the house, my home, turned into a place I no longer recognized. Around 9 o'clock, Kareem came home. I watched him park his car, carry his briefcase inside, looking exactly like any ordinary day, as if he weren't involved in betraying his own mother. 20 minutes later, another couple arrived, younger, maybe 25. Ayana repeated the exact same routine: cash, a smile, the door opening, suitcases rolling in, as if this were any roadside motel I counted silently. 2 couples inside the house, 4 strangers occupying my space, touching my belongings, breathing my air. "Since when have they been doing this?" I asked Rufus. He thought for a moment. "From what I've seen, at least 3 to 4 months. At first it was sparse, 1 person a week, then 2. Now there's almost something going on every day." 3 to 4 months. That long, under the same roof, they had been running this secret business. Whenever I went to bed early, went shopping, or visited friends, they welcomed guests, making money off my property. I did the math quickly in my head. If each couple paid $50 a night, and they hosted 2 to 3 couples every evening, then they were making between $100 and $150 a day. In a month, that was over $3,000. 4 months meant more than $12,000. $12,000 earned illegally, using my house, my electricity, my water, my gas. And not once did they ask. Not once did they tell me they were stealing from me. My own son and daughter-in-law were stealing from me in the pettiest, most calculated way. The night grew deeper. Around 11, the lights in the house went out one by one. The living room, then the kitchen. The bedroom lights stayed on for a few more minutes, then went dark. Everything fell silent. I stayed frozen at the window, unmoving, struggling to process all I had just witnessed. Rufus brought me a blanket and a cup of hot tea. "You should try to get some rest, Ms. Etta. We have a lot to watch tomorrow." But I could not close my eyes. Knowing strangers were sleeping in my house, I simply could not. I kept watch until dawn, and my vigil was rewarded. At 6 o'clock, the door opened. The first couple dragged their suitcase out, a taxi already waiting. They left quickly and quietly like ghosts, dissolving into the morning light. Half an hour later, the second couple left too. By 7, all the guests were gone. Ayanna carried trash bags out to the bin in front of the yard, then went back inside as if nothing had just happened. At 8, Kareem, in his gray suit with his briefcase in hand, walked out with that straight-backed posture I had taught him as a boy. To anyone looking, he would seem like a respectable, hard-working, honest man. But I knew the truth. Behind the mask of a dutiful son was someone willing to sell out his own mother for money. During the day, I watched Ayanna. My daughter-in-law changed the sheets, cleaned the rooms, prepared for the next round of guests. Every movement was practiced, methodical. This was not something newly started. Ayanna was the brain behind the entire operation. Kareem might agree and support, but it was clearly Ayanna who organized everything. I could tell just by watching. On the evening of the second day, there were guests again. 3 people this time, 2 men and 1 woman. They looked like friends traveling together. The routine was identical. Cash in hand, professional smile, door opening. I remained at Rufus's window, mentally recording every movement, every transaction, every stab of betrayal Rufus suggested taking photos, but I refused. I needed to understand the full machinery before collecting digital evidence. My instincts told me something even worse was hiding behind the curtain. And then Rufus said something that changed everything. On the second night, close to 10 o'clock, he walked over, his face clouded. "Ms. Etta, there's something else. I've been hesitating whether to tell you." My heart began to pound. "What is it, Rufus?" He sat across from me, worry rising in his aged eyes. 2 weeks ago, I saw Ayanna meeting a man at Boomtown Coffee on the corner. It wasn't Kareem. This man was older, well-dressed, carrying a briefcase, the kind lawyers or doctors use. They talked for nearly an hour. I was at the table next to them. I wasn't trying to listen, but a few words slipped through. I leaned forward, my whole body taut like a pulled string. "What words, Rufus?" He swallowed, then spoke slowly. "Documents, mental capacity, medical evaluation, and nursing home." The whole world seemed to stop. Those words crashed down on me like blocks of ice. Mental capacity, medical evaluation, nursing home. No, they could not possibly be planning that. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely there. Rufus nodded slowly. "Wait until midnight on Friday, Ms. Etta. I have noticed Fridays are always different. More people, more movement. Wait until midnight. You will see everything." Rufus's words echoed in my head like funeral bells. It could not be coincidence. Not after we had just uncovered the illegal rentals. What lay before me was bigger, darker, more carefully calculated than I had imagined. They were not just stealing from me. They were preparing a move far more cruel. A move that could strip me not only of my home, but of my freedom, my dignity, my entire life. Do you hear the tick-tock of the clock? With each beat, they were one step closer to their plan, and at exactly midnight on Friday, while everyone else slept, the back door of my house would open. The person stepping out would not be Ayanna alone. That night, the truth would turn on the lights all by itself. The next 3 days, I lived in a state of tension stretched tight like a wire. Every morning, I watched guests leave my house. Every night, I watched new faces drag suitcases inside. The flow of people moved steadily, almost like an assembly line. Ayanna coordinated everything with military precision. My daughter-in-law kept a separate notebook listing schedules, guest names, payments. Once, when Ayanna left the notebook on the kitchen counter while making coffee, I could still see, from Rufus's window, the neat columns of dates, codes, and numbers. It was clear this wasn't some impulsive side hustle. They had records, a system, a fully developed operation prepared months in advance. Kareem appeared less often, but he was fully complicit. He changed the sheets in rooms Ayanna hadn't finished, bought more soap, toilet paper, and towels, kept the lawn trimmed like a carpet to impress the guests. At night, when they thought no one was watching, he sat with Ayanna at the dining table, the very table beneath the hanging lamp my husband had installed 20 years ago, counting each bill of cash, 20s, 50s, hundreds passed between their hands, stacked, stuffed into envelopes. They laughed in a way that twisted my stomach into knots. Thursday night, I decided to take a risk. I needed to know exactly what Ayanna had discussed with the man carrying the briefcase. I called Deja Whitfield, my closest friend, and the lawyer I trusted most. 30 years ago, we met in a sewing class. Deja was smart, determined. She went to law school at 40, now specializing in family and property law. If anyone understood the legal danger looming over me, it was Deja. "Etta, what you're describing is extremely serious," Deja said over the phone, her voice sharp with concern. "If they're running unlicensed lodging with no permits, no taxes, and without the property owner's consent, you're talking potential fraud, property abuse, tax evasion. But what alarms me are the words you mentioned: mental capacity and nursing home. Does Kareem have any power of attorney over you? Have you ever signed anything giving him decision-making authority?" I searched my memory. No, never. All my documents are in the bank safe. Deja exhaled slowly. "Good. Very good. But listen carefully. If they're trying to declare you incompetent, the goal is to legally control your assets. The process is complicated. It requires medical evaluations, psychological assessments, and a hearing in front of a judge. They can't just decide it unless a corrupt doctor signs off, along with an unethical lawyer who knows how to bend the rules. If that's the case, they'll try. And if they succeed, Etta, they could have you placed in a nursing home against your will and take your house legally." A chill rippled down my spine. "What should I do, Deja?" "3 things," Deja said, counting each point. 1. Solid evidence of what they're doing. Photos, videos, testimony. 2. Protect your legal documents. Do not let them get access. 3. Once you have enough evidence, I'll file the official complaint and handle everything. But Etta, you must be extremely careful. If they sense you know anything, they may accelerate their plan." "You mean, how?" I asked, feeling my hands tremble. "Drugging you so that, in front of a doctor, you appear confused, creating staged situations to make you seem unstable, fabricating evidence that you can't take care of yourself. I've seen these cases, more often than you'd think." When I put down the phone, my hand was still shaking. At that moment, I understood the scale of the danger. I wasn't just being robbed, I was being groomed for a fate worse than death. Losing autonomy, losing my home, losing my dignity, being branded incompetent and locked away in a nursing home while my son and daughter-in-law took everything I built, backed by paperwork, signatures, and a judge who might never know the truth. Friday arrived, the very day Rufus had marked as special. From early morning, I felt the atmosphere shift. Ayanna cleaned the entire house, changed the sheets in every room, bought fresh flowers, and placed them all over the living room, preparing as if for an event. Kareem came home early. By 6 in the evening, he and Ayanna were fine-tuning the last details. At 7, the parade began. Not just 1 or 2 couples, but groups. The first group was 4 people. 2 young couples with cameras, speaking cheerful English. Ayanna welcomed them professionally, showed them the rooms, took payment. 30 minutes later came 3 middle-aged women with large suitcases, then a couple in their 60s, then 2 men on a work trip. I counted 11 people in my house. The living room had turned into a common area, Through the curtains, I saw them chatting, some even casually cooking in my kitchen. Ayanna and Kareem moved around like two model Airbnb hosts, handing out extra towels, recommending Houston attractions. My home had transformed into a fully operating hostel, while I, the legal owner, was hiding in a neighbor's house like a refugee in my own neighborhood. "I've never seen it this crowded," Rufus murmured. "This really is a special night." He was right. The weekend brought crowds, and Ayanna and Kareem took full advantage, I estimated. If each person paid $30 a night, tonight alone, they were pocketing more than $300. A whole weekend, nearly $1,000. And this happened every week. Hours crawled by. I watched people dine, stroll around the neighborhood, then return. At 10, the lights went off. One by one, guests went to their rooms. Ayanna and Kareem cleaned the kitchen, the living area, then went to bed. The house fell into silence. But Rufus had told me, wait until midnight. That was when everything would show its face. I sat still, every nerve stretched until I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Rufus's wall clock ticked softly. 11:30, 40, 50. Each minute dragging like an eternity, Rufus dozed off on the sofa, exhausted. But I kept my eyes wide open, glued to my home, waiting for whatever Rufus had once witnessed, the thing that would expose the truth. At exactly midnight, I held my breath. The side door, the one leading to the backyard rarely used, opened slowly. Ayanna stepped out, but my daughter-in-law was not alone. Behind her was a man in his 50s, dressed in dark clothing, carrying a briefcase exactly as Rufus had described. My heart pounded. Why meet at midnight? Why sneak through the back door? They walked straight toward the shed, my husband's old workshop. Ayanna pulled out a key and unlocked it. The light inside the shed flicked on. Through the small window, I saw two silhouettes moving around, gesturing. Ayanna took something from her pocket, documents perhaps. The man pulled out a thick folder from his briefcase, shining a flashlight as he examined the pages. Ayanna flipped through them, nodding. The two seemed to reach an agreement. About 20 minutes later, the man packed the folder back into his briefcase. The shed light went out. They didn't return to the house. Instead, they walked to the back gate leading to the alleyway. Ayanna unlatched it. The man slipped out, disappearing into the darkness. Ayanna locked the gate, returned to the house, and closed the side door. Everything neat, quiet, seamless. Something no one would know had happened unless they had been watching. I shook Rufus awake. I saw it. Midnight. Ayanna met a man in the shed. They reviewed documents. They're preparing something big. Rufus jolted upright, rubbing his eyes, checking the clock. It's late, but now we know there's a third person, someone working in the shadows. This is worse than we thought. I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. At Saturday dawn, guests trickled out, some leaving early, others staying for the weekend. Ayanna calmly prepared breakfast, coffee, toast, fruit, her gentle smile as if no secret meeting had taken place the night before Kareem left the house at 9, driving off. Ayanna stayed to host. This was my chance. I had to get into the shed. I needed to know what they left behind, I told Rufus. He tried to stop me. "It's risky, Ms. Etta. If Ayanna sees you—" I shook my head. "I have the back gate key. I'll go through the alley. Ayanna is busy up front. She won't notice." Rufus finally agreed, but insisted on accompanying me to the alley to keep watch. We slipped through his back door, moving quietly down the empty alley. It was a peaceful Saturday morning. People were still busy with breakfast in their homes. At the back gate of my property, I pulled out the key, my hand trembling slightly. The lock clicked. I stepped into my own backyard like an intruder, my heart pounding. The shed sat about 20 paces away. I bent low, using the bushes I had planted years ago as cover. Every step sounded thunderous, every breath too loud. Finally, I stood before the shed door. The lock was a simple one, the very one my husband had installed. I searched through my keys, tried 1, 2, then the third finally turned. I slipped inside and closed the door behind me. Sunlight filtered through the dirty window, dust floating in the air. The scent of old wood and dampness hung thick. Rusty tools lined the walls, boxes stacked in corners. Everything looked familiar. Then my eyes landed on something foreign atop my husband's old workbench, a gray metal box, modern in design with a digital lock. I walked toward it. It was closed but not locked, just secured with 2 side latches. I tried them. Click. The box opened, and what lay inside made me stop breathing. Inside the box were stacks of cash, all in United States dollars, 20s, 50s, and hundreds. I counted quickly with my eyes, at least $10,000, maybe more. All of it was money they had collected from their illegal business over many months. But that was not the worst part. Under the cash was a stack of documents. I pulled them out and carefully read each page. The first sheet was a rental contract. My house was registered as a short-term tourist accommodation. The owner section read, Kareem Mosley, my son. I went numb. I am the legal owner. My name is still on the deed. How could my son sign a contract as if he were the owner? In the fine print below, there was a line. The legal owner is in the process of transferring ownership documentation pending judicial procedure. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Transferring ownership? Judicial procedure? This was not just secret renting. They were trying to legally seize my home using paperwork I kept flipping pages. A psychological evaluation form with the logo of a private clinic. Patient, Etta Mosley. Appointment date, 2 weeks from now. Reason, assessment of mental capacity and decision-making ability. Family request, due to concerns of progressive cognitive decline. I clenched the paper in my hand. They were planning to paint me as a senile old woman, unable to care for herself, needing others to take control. A blatant lie. I was still clear-headed, still healthy. I still knew exactly who I was. Then I saw a cost estimate from a private nursing facility. Golden Hope Residence, specialized care for older adults. Cost, $3,000 per month. Highlighted in yellow. Private room, 24-hour security, special program for dementia patients. A legal prison for me. They planned to lock me up under the guise of concern. And finally, the page that froze me to the core, a full power of attorney. It granted Kareem complete authority over all my assets, bank accounts, and medical decisions. Everything was already printed, only missing my signature. Clipped beside it was a handwritten note in Ayana's handwriting. Dr. Velasquez confirms mild sedatives can be used during the appointment. Signature will be obtained while patient is in a confused state. Witness has been arranged. Extra fee $5,000. I was shaking so hard I nearly dropped the paper. They intended to drug me, cloud my mind, then force my signature on a document handing them total power over my life. A paid-off witness would stand there, swearing that I was completely lucid. On paper, it would look legal. In reality, it was a crime. If you discovered that your own son was secretly preparing to put you in a nursing home, with paperwork, a doctor, and a bought-and-paid-for witness all lined up, what would you do? Expose them immediately or pretend not to know, so you could turn the tables later? I heard voices outside and froze. Ayana's voice, very close, probably talking to a guest. I quickly grabbed my phone and took photos of every page. My hands were shaking. A few shots were blurry, but I had enough evidence. I put everything back exactly where it had been, closed the box, shut the shed door, then crouched and hurried back to the rear gate. Rufus was waiting, his face pale. "I thought they had caught you," he said. "You were in there nearly 20 minutes." I said nothing at first. I just handed him my phone. He scrolled through the photos, his face growing more ashen with each one. "Good Lord, Etta. This is a complete conspiracy. They are not just stealing from you. They are destroying you step by step." I broke down in tears. "I have to call Deja. Right now." We rushed back to Rufus's house. My hands trembled as I dialed. Even though it was early Saturday morning, Deja Whitfield answered by the third ring. "Etta, what happened?" I told her everything. The photos, the documents, the plan. On the other end of the line, there was a long silence. Then Deja spoke slowly, her voice lower, tightly controlled. Etta, this is a scheme of abduction, document falsification, intentional fraud, and asset seizure. With this evidence, we can stop them. But you have to move fast. If the mental evaluation is in 2 weeks, it means they will start speeding things up. What should I do, Deja? First, do not go back to that house. Stay somewhere safe. Tomorrow, Sunday, come to my office. I will bring a trusted notary. We will put legal protections on your assets immediately. On Monday, we will file a formal complaint with all the evidence. And after that, she paused, her voice dropping even further, we will set a trap. A trap? I repeated, still unable to grasp it fully. My mind was spinning from everything I had just discovered in the shed. Forged documents, plans to drug me, nursing home estimates. All of it dark, calculated to a chilling precision. Yes, Etta, a trap, Deja said firmly. They think you know nothing. They think you're still on vacation, carefree and trusting. That is your advantage. You have the evidence, while they have no idea. Now, we will turn that evidence into a double-edged blade, not only to stop them, but to make them pay for every single thing they've done. On Sunday morning, Rufus drove me to Deja's office near the Harris County Civil Courthouse. She was waiting with another man, the notary public she had mentioned. His name was Byron Carlisle, about 50, composed, serious-looking, but with kind eyes. Mrs. Mosley, I'm very sorry for what you're going through, he said as he shook my hand. But I want you to feel safe today. When we finish here, your son won't be able to touch a single cent. And if he tries, he'll face criminal charges immediately. For the next 3 hours, I signed stacks of documents. Deja patiently explained each one. This is a revocable power of attorney, canceling any authority Kareem ever had. This is a declaration of full mental capacity, which will be confirmed by a forensic physician tomorrow. This is a new will, removing Kareem from inheritance due to fraud. And finally, a temporary protective order we will file in court Monday morning. Every signature I placed felt like slicing through another rope that had been binding me. I was no longer a mother backed into a corner. I was reclaiming my life. And the trap? I asked as I signed the last page. Deja smiled. Not a cheerful smile, but the smile of someone who sees the entire chessboard. The trap requires your acting skills, Etta. You will go home, not today, but tomorrow night. You will return as though nothing has happened, coming back from your trip, cheerful, tired, unsuspecting. For a few days, you must behave completely normally while we work behind the scenes. Byron leaned in and added, We're notifying housing inspectors. If they find illegal lodging operations inside that house, their business will be shut down immediately and they'll face heavy fines. Deja continued. I also checked on Dr. Arturo Velasquez. He's been investigated twice by the medical board for ethics violations. With your complaint and the photos you took, we can request a criminal inquiry. If they prove he used medication to manipulate a patient's signature, he'll lose his license and face criminal charges. I sat quietly for a moment. Now I understood. This wasn't just about fighting Kareem and Ayanna. It was about dismantling the entire network. The corrupt doctor, the fake witness, the illegal lodging business. How long will all of this take? I asked. Deja looked at Byron, then answered. The housing inspector could show up this week, Wednesday or Thursday. The doctor investigation will take longer, but once we file tomorrow, the process starts immediately. And Kareem and Ayanna... She paused, her voice dropping lower. We will let them fall at the exact moment they think they've already won. If you were Etta, would you be calm enough to return to the home of your betrayers, pretend to trust them, and wait for the perfect moment to strike back? One small mistake, and the entire plan could collapse. But if successful, they would sign their own downfall. I spent the rest of Sunday at Rufus's house, rehearsing in my mind every sentence, every smile, every gesture I had to be convincing. I couldn't let even a flicker of anger, suspicion, or fear slip through. I had to look like a mother who had just finished visiting her sister, warm, innocent, blissfully unaware, ironic. They had been acting in front of me for months. Now it was my turn, and I was the lead. On Monday night, with my suitcase in hand and my heart pounding, I approached my house. Rufus dropped me off at the corner so it would look natural. I walked the last stretch as if I'd just stepped out of a taxi. I rang the bell. Rapid footsteps approached. Kareem opened the door, eyes wide. "Mom? I thought you were coming back tomorrow." I smiled gently, the smile of a mother with not a single doubt in her heart. "I missed home, so I came back a day early." Behind him, Ayanna appeared. Her smile was too smooth, too perfect. "Welcome back, Mom. How was your trip?" I walked into my own home, which now looked like someone else's territory. Everything was spotless, organized, with no trace of the 11 guests who had stayed there just 2 nights earlier. Ayanna had wiped the slate clean. "The trip was wonderful," I said lightly. "My sister spoiled me terribly, but in the end, nothing feels as good as being home." They helped carry my suitcase into the room, poured tea, asked questions I answered with carefully prepared details. The restaurants, the beach, little anecdotes. Every word, every smile was a performance in this play. Kareem and Ayanna listened, nodding and smiling. But I saw something in their eyes. Relief. They believed their secret was safe. "The house looks lovely," I praised. "You two take such great care of everything." Ayanna responded quickly, almost too quickly. "Yes, we cleaned thoroughly and watered the plants every day. Everything is exactly how you left it." I sipped tea and said calmly, "It even smells different, like fresh cleaning products." A flash of fear flickered in Ayanna's eyes. "Oh, we just wanted everything perfect for your return." Lies. She had scrubbed away every trace of her crimes. That night, I lay in my own bed. But I did not sleep. I listened. Around 11 p.m., soft voices drifted from the next room. I padded over quietly. The door was slightly ajar. I leaned in. "Do you think she's suspicious?" Kareem asked, voice low. "No. She's the same as always. Too trusting. The plan is fine," Ayanna replied, cold as ice. "What about Dr. Velasquez?" "It's all arranged Friday appointment. We'll give her the medication at breakfast. By the time she realizes what she signed, it'll be too late. The power of attorney will be valid, and we'll have full control." A brief silence. Then Kareem whispered, "And after that?" Ayanna answered, her voice like a blade. "Then she goes to the facility. Golden Hope already confirmed. We'll visit once a month, just for appearances, and this house will be completely ours." Completely ours. Those words stabbed through me like steel needles. I returned to my room quietly. Tears rolled onto my pillow, but they were not tears of pain. They were tears of fury and resolve. I had just heard the full confession. I now knew everything, every detail, every step, every day. Friday. I had less than a week to perfect the trap in reverse. On Tuesday morning, I acted as if nothing had ever happened, made coffee, set breakfast, chatted with Kareem and Ayanna about little everyday things. They were acting too. The 3 of us were standing on the stage of a horror play, each holding a different script. The difference was that I knew they were acting, and they had no idea I was acting too. When Kareem left for work and Ayanna went out shopping, I locked my bedroom door and called Deja. I recounted every word I had heard the night before. "Perfect," Deja said, her voice light but razor sharp. "Friday is the appointment with that doctor. That gives us enough time. City inspectors will be there on Thursday. Ideally, we catch them right before they can drug you." "Do you think they'll still be taking guests this week?" Deja asked. I'm guessing Thursday and Friday night, those days are always busy, I answered. Then we'll coordinate for the inspectors to come Thursday night, when the house is full of live evidence. For the next 2 days, I stayed in character as the gentle, almost pitifully trusting mother. I asked Ayanna if she needed help, even baked Kareem's favorite cookies. I watched them relax, convinced their plan was still safe. On Wednesday night, Ayanna even brought me a flyer. "Mom, I saw this health center has a preventive checkup package for seniors. I'll drive you there on Friday, okay? It's free for older people." "A health checkup? That sounds good," I replied, calmer than I felt. "Great. I've already booked 10 a.m. Friday," Ayanna smiled, relieved, thinking everything was going smoothly. I smiled back, while inside, my blood boiled. $5,000 for that free appointment. On Thursday afternoon, as they were busy preparing for guests, my phone buzzed. A text from Deja. "Inspector confirmed for 9 p.m. tonight. Police will be nearby. Stay in your room when they arrive. We'll handle the rest." Tonight, their world would crack. Right at 7 p.m., guests started arriving. A young couple with backpacks, 3 women traveling together, then a single businessman with a small suitcase. By 8:30, there were 7 strangers in my home. Ayanna played the professional host. Kareem hauled luggage, pointed out rooms, wore the perfect service smile. I stayed in my room, pretending to read, eyes glued to the clock. 8:40, 8:50, 5 more minutes. Then the doorbell rang. Firm, authoritative. Not a guest. I heard hurried footsteps, Kareem's voice asking who it was, then a sharp male voice. "City Inspector, please open the door." Silence. The air itself seemed to thicken. The door opened a crack. "Officer, what seems to be the problem?" Kareem tried to sound calm, but his voice faltered. "We received an anonymous complaint about illegal lodging operations at this address. I need to conduct an inspection." Ayanna jumped in, voice raised. "There must be some mistake. This is a private home. We're not running a business." The inspector replied crisply, "I have a court-issued inspection order. If you refuse, I'll return with police and a search warrant." A short pause. Then Kareem backed down. "Yes, sir. Please come in." Through the crack of my door, I saw the inspector, around 40, wearing a shirt with an official badge and holding a clipboard, followed by an assistant with a camera. They walked through each room. "How many permanent residents live in this home?" 3, my mother, my wife, and me, Kareem answered, voice unsteady. The inspector glanced at the living room, where 7 guests were sitting and standing, faces confused. "And these people?" Ayanna stammered. "Friends. Just visiting." The inspector walked up to a man around 30. "Sir, are you a family friend?" He answered honestly, or nervously. "No, I booked a room online, paid $35 a night." Kareem's face drained of color. Ayanna tried to jump in, but the inspector was already opening my old master bedroom. Inside, 3 women were unpacking suitcases, clothes spread across the bed, toiletries in the ensuite bathroom. "And these 3 are friends, too?" Ayanna was speechless. That was all the answer needed. The inspector pulled out a small device and started counting rooms, taking photos. The assistant filmed every detail up close. Room 1, 2 non-resident occupants. Room 2, 3 non-resident occupants. Room 3, 1 non-resident occupant. Shared bathroom, clear signs of multiple users. Kitchen, supplies exceeding needs of 3 residents. Hallway, extra towels stacked along the wall. Every sentence was another nail in the coffin of their black market business. Kareem made one last attempt. "Sir, it's a misunderstanding. Sometimes we help friends who need a place to stay, but this isn't a business." "Do you accept payment?" Kareem hesitated. "Sometimes we accept contributions to help with costs." "That is a business," the inspector cut him off. "And to run lodging, you need a business license, lodging permit, fire code certification, sanitation certification, and tax filings. Do you have any of those documents?" Silence. The two accomplices looked at each other, out of words. The inspector flipped through his file. "According to our system, this property is owned by Etta Mosley. There is no authorization for commercial operations. In addition to administrative violations, fine of $10,000, this case will be referred to the tax authorities for undeclared income and for review of fraudulent use of another person's property." At that, I opened my door and stepped out. Every eye turned toward me. Confused guests, calm inspector, and Kareem and Ayanna, terrified, pale. "Good evening," I said evenly. "I'm Etta Mosley, the owner of this house." "Have you authorized any lodging operations here?" the inspector asked. I looked straight at Kareem and Ayanna before answering. "No, I only discovered this a few days ago." Ayanna rushed toward me. "Mom, I can explain." I raised my hand to stop her. "I don't need an explanation, not right now." Then I turned back to the inspector. "What happens next, sir?" "The guests must vacate immediately. They have 30 minutes to gather their things. Your son and daughter-in-law will receive a formal citation and must appear in city court next week. Police are waiting outside if any assistance is needed." The next 30 minutes were chaotic. Guests hurriedly packing, some demanding refunds. Ayanna had to pay them back under the inspector's watch. Kareem was silent as stone, watching his business collapse in a single night. The inspector handed me the report. "You should speak with your lawyer. You're entitled to seek damages." "I already have one, thank you," I replied. When the inspector and his assistant left, the house fell into a storm silence. 3 people remained in the living room. I stood by the window. Kareem sat with his face buried in his hands. Ayanna leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, eyes like a cornered animal. Ayanna spoke first, her voice desperate, all sweetness gone. "Mom, it looks bad, I know, but we had our reasons." I turned around slowly. "Reasons? Debt? And that's enough to turn my home into an illegal lodging business behind my back?" Ayanna took half a step closer. "We were going to tell you soon. We just wanted to get a little money together first. Before what?" I cut in, my voice like steel. "Before you drugged me and forced me to sign a fraudulent power of attorney?" The room went dead. Ayanna turned ghost white. Kareem's head snapped up, eyes stunned. "How did—" Kareem's voice cracked. "How do I know?" I finished it for him. "Because I never went on any trip, Kareem. I was right here, watching, unraveling every thread of your petty, calculated little plan. If you were Etta, in that very moment of exposure, would you push everything to the limit? Or let them stew in their own trap a little longer, so the final blow would be absolute? One wrong move and everything could unravel. But if you time it just right, they might be the ones to sign their own sentence." I stepped fully into the living room, looking straight at both of them with an intensity that made them retreat half a step. "I know about the illegal lodging business. I know about the cash hidden in the shed. I know about Dr. Velasquez. I know about the Friday appointment where you planned to give me sedatives. I know about the power of attorney papers you wanted to force me to sign. And I know about Golden Hope Residence, the place you planned to lock me away in." Ayanna shook her head frantically. "No, it's not what you think. Yes, we talked to the doctor, but only as a precaution because we were worried about your health." "Enough lies!" I cut her off. My voice bounced sharply off the walls of my own home. "I found the documents, Ayanna. I read the notes in your own handwriting. Mild sedative during appointment signature to be taken while disoriented from medication. That is exactly what you wrote." Ayanna's face drained of color, her lips trembled, but no words came out. I turned to my son. "And you, Kareem, the child I raised, loved, and gave everything your father and I could possibly give. How could you do this?" Tears streamed down Kareem's face. "Mom, we were really in crisis. We owe $30,000. The bank threatened to seize our old apartment. My company downsized. I might lose my job. Ayanna had to borrow from loan sharks, and they came to our house threatening us. I was terrified, Mom. I looked at Ayanna. For the first time, beneath all the masks, I saw a frightened and desperate woman, but still someone who chose the wrong way to save herself. When you're scared, you come to me. When you're desperate, you ask for help, I said slowly, firmly. But you don't get to turn your fear into my nightmare. You don't get to save yourselves by destroying me. Kareem staggered to his feet. Mom, please, we can fix this. We'll pay everything back. We'll move out if you want. Just please don't call the police. If you do, we'll both go to jail. I looked into the eyes that were once so clear and innocent, feeling my heart crack open. What do you want me to do? Let you drug me? Let you put me in a facility while you enjoy my property? Pretend to be mentally unstable so your lives could be easier? It wasn't that extreme, Kareem whispered. Ayanna was only exploring options, but I would never. I heard everything last night. I cut him off again. I heard you plan each step. I even heard the line, visit Mom once a month to keep up appearances. You turned me into a task, a burden to manage. Kareem collapsed back onto the couch, sobbing. Ayanna stood frozen, her perfect daughter-in-law mask shattered to pieces. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. Tomorrow is Friday. You plan to take me to Dr. Velasquez at 10. That will not happen. What will happen is this. Pack your belongings and leave my house. Deadline, noon on Friday. Ayanna snapped instantly. You're kicking us out? Then where are we supposed to go? Thinking before betraying me might have helped, I replied, flat and calm. You have family. You have friends. Figure it out. Mom, please, Kareem begged. We don't have money for a deposit. We have nothing left. There is $10,000 in the shed. Money you earned illegally using my property, I pointed out. Use that for your deposit, and save the rest to pay the city fines and your legal fees. Ayanna's eyes flared with rage. Her voice dropped all pretense, dripping venom. Fine, we'll leave. But this isn't over. We'll hire lawyers, appeal the fines, and sue you for wrongful eviction. I gave her a smile without joy. Go ahead. But my attorney already has photos of every fraudulent document, every detail of your illegal operation, including the sedative notes and the hidden cash. Would you like all of that brought into court? Ayanna's expression collapsed. She understood. In this game, I was 2 moves ahead. For clarity, I continued, my attorney has already filed termination of any existing power of attorney, a forensic psychological evaluation confirming my full mental capacity, a new will excluding Kareem from inheritance due to fraud. Kareem lifted his head, stunned. You're disinheriting me? What did you expect? I said wearily. Reward you for trying to destroy me? The rest of the night was tension stretched thin as wire. Kareem and Ayanna locked themselves in the bedroom. I sat alone in the living room, exhausted but relieved. Around midnight, I heard the wheels of suitcases scraping across the floor. They were packing. Friday morning, I woke early, brewed a pot of coffee just for myself, and watched the sunlight spill over the garden Marcus and I had planted together. At 9, they appeared with 4 large suitcases, avoiding my eyes as they loaded them into the car. Kareem came back inside and placed the house keys on the entry table. I thought he might say something, an apology, or a final plea. But no, just an empty look. Then he walked out. Then the engine roared, tires screeched over the curb, and they were gone. Silence returned. The house was empty. I was alone. I sat in the living room for a long time. The house felt bigger, quieter, and more mine than ever. I walked through each room, reclaiming the spaces that had been invaded by strangers. I opened all the windows, stripped every bed in those guest-filled rooms. I would wash everything, though honestly, I debated burning them. Some memories aren't worth keeping. Near noon, Rufus knocked on the door. He was carrying a steaming pot of chicken stew. I figured you wouldn't want to cook today, he said, in the gentle voice of a true friend. We ate together in my kitchen. I told him everything, the inspection, the confrontation, kicking Kareem and Ayanna out. Rufus listened silently, only nodding here and there. When I finished, he placed his old hand on mine. You did the right thing. It hurts, but it's right. Why does it still hurt so much? I whispered. Because he's your son, Rufus said softly. A mother's love doesn't disappear because of betrayal. It hurts because you loved him. Without love, there would be no pain. He was right. That night I cried, for the son I thought I had, for the family I thought I built, for the betrayal, for the greed that poisoned blood. But I also cried in relief. I survived, I won, and I am still the owner of my life, my mind, and my home. When the door closes and silence fills the house, if you were Etta, what would be the first thing you'd do? Call your lawyer, call a locksmith, or call the police to document the scene? The right decision, made at the right time, can turn today's victory into a guarantee of tomorrow's peace. 6 months have passed since the night Inspector Quentin Glass knocked on my door. Now this house truly belongs to me, quiet, safe, and peaceful. I hired a professional cleaning company to scrub every corner, removing all traces of the strangers who once filled my rooms. I repainted the walls, warm, pale yellow instead of the cold gray from before the furniture that had been used by other people. I gave away. In its place, I bought new items. Nothing luxurious, but enough for each room to breathe with my own presence again. The old master bedroom, where Marcus and I shared 35 years of our lives, has become a small art studio. I had always wanted to paint, but only now do I finally have the time and the peace to truly begin. Rufus Tillman is still my neighbor and my closest friend. We have dinner together twice a week. He helped me install a new security system, not because I'm afraid anymore, but because I cherish my privacy more than ever. As for Deja Whitfield, she is no longer just an attorney. She is a friend, someone I trust, someone I will always be grateful for. I updated my will and left her a small amount. She protested, but I insisted some people deserve to be remembered. And Dr. Arturo Velasquez. 3 months later, the medical board revoked his license. The investigation found he had participated in multiple cases of medical fraud. He is now facing criminal charges. Justice sometimes comes late, but it always comes. Kareem, my son, turned out to be the hardest lesson of my life. 1 month after Kareem and Ayanna left, Deja called me. Etta, the district attorney's office is ready to press charges, but they need your confirmation. The decision is yours. I sat in silence for a long moment, the phone feeling impossibly heavy in my hand. If I agree, what happens? I asked quietly. 2 to 5 years in prison for both of them, Deja said bluntly. Ayanna will get more time. She's the one who planned it. Kareem could get less if he cooperates, but both will carry a permanent criminal record. I closed my eyes. In my mind, I saw Kareem at age 5, running home from kindergarten with a messy crayon drawing. Mom, I drew our family. I saw Kareem at 10, helping Marcus fix the backyard fence, voice full of excitement. Dad, am I doing it right? And I saw Kareem at 18, on his high school graduation day, hugging me tight and saying, "You're the best mom in the world. I'm going to make you proud." When did that child disappear? When did greed replace love? I took a deep breath, then whispered into the phone, "I won't file criminal charges." A beat of silence. "Are you sure, Etta?" "No," I admitted. "But it's something I can live with. They'll have to live with what they did. A guilty conscience is the harshest prison." 2 weeks later, I received a handwritten letter. The envelope was wrinkled, the address scrawled unevenly, the handwriting unmistakable. It was from Kareem. I sat in the kitchen, coffee beside me, and opened the letter. "Mom, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I'm not writing to ask for that. I just want you to know I'm sorry. Ayanna and I broke up. I couldn't stay with someone capable of planning something that cruel. I moved to a small apartment in Sunnyside, working construction, paying off debt piece by piece. Every morning I wake up, I remember what I've done. Every night I go to sleep, I see your face when you found out the truth. It haunts me. If I could turn back time, I would change everything. But I can't. So I'm trying to live better. To live in a way that honors the love you gave me for the first 30 years of my life. I love you. And I regret losing you. Kareem. I cried. Not tears of forgiveness, but the tears of a mother who still loves, even after betrayal. I placed the letter in the drawer beside Marcus's bed. I'm not ready to respond. Maybe I never will be, but I couldn't throw it away. One afternoon, while I was painting in the studio, Rufus stopped by. He stood looking at the canvas, a garden full of white lilies, the flowers Marcus used to give me every birthday. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "That's how I heal." I smiled. Every brushstroke is a part of my life being reclaimed. Rufus nodded. "You're stronger than you think, Etta." I chuckled. "Or just more stubborn." He smiled kindly. "That's a kind of strength, too." That night, I stood before the bathroom mirror, looking at the 64-year-old woman staring back at me. More wrinkles, more silver strands, but eyes that were bright, steady, unbroken. The eyes of someone who fought and won. I thought of Marcus. If he were still alive, he would probably hold me and say, "You did the right thing, Etta. You protected yourself. You survived." And who knows, maybe somewhere, in the quiet night of Midtown Houston, inside the home we built with our own hands, he is saying exactly that. I turned off the light and got into bed. My bed, my house, my life alone. Yes, hurt. Yes, but free. In the dark, I whispered to myself, "I've learned that love can sometimes be a trap wrapped in tenderness, but loving yourself is the strongest shield against betrayal. They tried to take my house, my money, my freedom, but they couldn't take my dignity, because in the end, that's the only thing that truly belongs to us. And no one, not even your own children, has the right to take it." Outside, the city of Houston slept peacefully. And in a small house in Midtown, a 64-year-old woman slept too, with a soft smile on her lips. Because at last, she had found the most precious thing of all, herself. If this story touched your heart, please hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the journeys ahead. Every week, we tell stories of people who fell, but rose again stronger than ever, and who knows, one day your story might be the one told here.